What's up with people not talking about Elon Musk being on the Epstein's list? Along with Peter Thiel, Steve Bannon and Prince Andrew, I would imagine this being at the top of Reddit and talked about for weeks, but all I see are tumbleweed. What's up with that? Edit, 5 minutes into my post, someone reported me to Reddit to receive a Reddit Carosources. What's up with that? This is our current Epstein list megathread. We'll be sticking it to make sure it doesn't get buried among old posts. So anything that relates to the current batch of Epstein files goes in here. All other Epstein threads short of something really crazy happening will be deleted for the next week or so feel free to ask top-level questions starting with question, as well as giving answers starting with answer. Please remember that top-level comments have to either be a question or be an actual attempt at answering the question. If you want to state your opinions, which you're welcome to do, make sure you do it down thread. Answer, IRC, all the information that has come out actually backs up Musk's story that he did not go to the island, and he did not want to. Quoted in the article that you posted, in what appears to be a copy of Epstein's itinerary, Musk had a tentative trip to Epstein's Island on December 6, 2014. A note appended to that plan reads, "Is this still happening?" Italics added. Musk has continually said that Epstein invited him and he refused. So, the document saying that Musk was a tentative guest, with questions about it actually happening, can be interpreted as a bit of an exoneration of Musk. There does not seem to be the same preponderance of evidence against Musk as there is of others. I don't know who is or isn't on the Epstein list since it has not been released. I think the people who want more information from the DOJ and FBI feel that more evidence is needed. It seems that some people are willing to wait for facts before making accusations. This is not to say that Musk is innocent, only that the released papers do not clearly implicate him. To add to this, as much as I dislike Musk, Epstein was a billionaire financier who naturally had associations with other billionaires and powerful people. Just because some of them are obviously pedophiles doesn't mean that every interaction Epstein had with anyone else was always related to that. Just being on the list in itself isn't evidence enough of any wrongdoing. This is true. Like all criminals, Epstein had a front, and by all accounts, the island and the mansion on it was lovely. It's the shit he and select individuals were doing in the mansion that's the subject of this mess. My understanding is that Epstein mostly committed rape at his Palm Beach house. The island is just the kind of holiday house that makes for sensationalist rumors. Even if it did happen at the island, people talk about it like there was awful shit happening there all the time, which just doesn't make sense. Much more likely to be a influential politician or billionaire. It seems like you're a bad person, want to visit my island for a nice weekend, and I can fly in a couple girls that fit your preferences? That's the issue with the flight logs people were talking about a little while back. Just because they were on those logs doesn't mean they were pedophiles. Every rectangle is a square, but not all squares are rectangles. All squares are rectangles, not all rectangles are squares. On a Euclidean plane. Great. First, we're waiting on the flight logs from Epstein's plane. Now we're waiting on Euclid's plane too. Want to try that last sentence again? Every square is a rhombus, but every rhombus is a parallelogram. Yeah, the impression I always got from what little information is official is that he's a guy who rubbed shoulders with a lot of rich, powerful people. And if you reach a certain level of trust with him, then you start getting brought into his freakier activities, like parties and the like. And then the next level beyond that is where you start to get into disgusting, illegal activities. It's very similar to the Diddy situation. There were Diddy parties, and then there were Diddy parties. Like, not everyone who socialized with Diddy was participating in freak-offs, but because, like Epstein, his name is tainted now. The assumption is that anyone who ever socialized with Diddy at all was automatically participating in depraved freak-offs. Like most predators, there's levels to the shit. It doesn't get freaky on the ground floor. But if you hang around long enough and they start to trust you, they start to take you to the lower levels. The people we should be paying attention to are the people who were with Epstein a lot. And Donald Trump fits that bill. His planner probably looked something like this. Tuesday, peed shit with peed friends. Wednesday, dumb normie party for appearances. I remember the stuff about Stephen Hawking's name turning up and people assuming the worst, ignoring that Epstein had made a lot financial contributions to a lot of philanthropic and scientific organizations. Makes for an easy cover, like you said. Epstein made numerous donations to scientific organizations. Multiple accounts by scientists he courted described him as genuinely interested in and eager to discuss scientific topics. His interests focused on theoretical physics, genetics, artificial intelligence, transhumanism, evolution, and eugenics. Scientists were also interested in receiving Epstein's funding and tried to court his attention. Being a scientist in close proximity to Epstein does not mean that person is a pedophile. I'm pretty sure virtually none of them were. That all said, Stephen Hawking had a reputation, and that reputation predated his association with Epstein. Hawking was open about visiting strip clubs and sex clubs, and there were constant rumors of him propositioning female students. If there was a scientist in Epstein's orbit who was engaged in pedophilia, it would have been him. And yes, I'm fully aware. I'm talking about the man with a near-total loss of motor function. Do you think the kids on the island asked him if he had games on his wheelchair? Is a whole red wave literally a Reddit Nazi putsch? Racists are taking over. Plus, going to the island or not going to the island doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. The island came much later in the timeline. Most of the known crimes occurred on the mainland, in New York and Florida. And a fake, Musk does not seem to have been mentioned by any of the victims that have come forward over the years or even hanging around. That's the thing people don't realize. Just how many people who he just invited to a party were illegal? Nothing happened. Question for Hawkins. Did you have defending Elon Musk on your 2025 bingo card? Ha, not at all. And yet somehow we've ended up here. I will certainly say that you aren't defending Musk. You're just defending the burden of proof that should be required. It's easy for any of us to rush to judgment when it's people we don't agree with or perhaps even like. This basically sums up why defense attorneys are necessary and shouldn't be vilified for what they do. This is one of the issues with Release the Files. By all accounts, Epstein had connections and interactions that were not specifically sex trafficking. It muddies the water. Having your name in a file somewhere does not meet the burden of proof required for conviction. So it all just becomes hearsay. Maybe there's more, maybe not. Sadly, the authorities that hold the power to do something are not really reliable or trustworthy. Maybe there's more, maybe not. Sadly, the authorities that hold the power to do something are not really reliable or trustworthy, which is why we have to demand as much of the evidence as possible be public, even if it's not relevant in the end. The Trump Department of Prejudice, since we're renaming things under Bondi, is impossible to trust. So we have to do their job for them, including holding back until there's a preponderance of evidence. While this would be a fair argument, do remember that our justice system works way differently when you have money. Plus, your ability to hide your guilt or bully the problem away aggressive lawsuits also makes our system severely questionable. So, while the name being in the files shouldn't be automatically damning, it will be due to how our system and society interact. Doubly so, when we just examine their prior behavior. So while certain people won't be scrutinized, I fully comprehend the hard look people will do with those that hurry questionable behaviors as is. Elon is a god-tier example of someone with questionable behaviors, which is why they have to release the files. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm allowed to hate him and even act based on his personality. Quotes, family legacy, personal involvement in totalitarian fascism, damage to the country and planet as a whole. There is plenty to dislike before you even get to what he did or didn't do on Epstein's island. I don't want to defend Musk, but why baselessly accuse him of pedophilia when you can accurately accuse him of being a disgusting fascist? I agree. No need to lie about him, as a lot of people do, or repeat lies they heard about Musk. The truth is bad enough, and he has done enough damage to society. I don't like it when people make up lies about someone, even Musk. The guy is awful and dangerous without making things up. But why baselessly accuse him of pedophilia? So there were these kids trapped in an underwater cave in Thailand. So that was wrong. But that isn't evidence that could convict someone in a court of law. Musk was named in the newest drop of Epstein info because Epstein had him down as a tentative to visit the island on a certain day. This would be like someone writing in their journal, I asked X to commit a felony tomorrow. They haven't responded, so not sure if it's happening. And people calling X a felon when there's no evidence X did anything. Weird times we live in where everyone just wants to have people burned at the stake with no solid evidence. Kind of scary. I don't really think it's defending at all. More just encouraging people to at the very least be correct about things they don't like. Musk is a shit stain, yes. However, Everyone, including Musk, at the very least deserves to have their criticism be truthful and not filled with falsehoods. So again, it's not really a defense of the guy, just a reminder that truth is more important than hating on something because it's cool. Musk is a scummy guy. He might be everything but a pedo, but a wealthy and scummy guy will hang out with other wealthy and scummy guys. What the hell? Actual nuance and grace surrounding a politically charged topic on Reddit? Excuse me, I have to go check to make sure gravity is still working. Elon might be a self-centered, spineless Nazi prick, but he ain't no pedo. Right, but it does mean they should at least be investigated. Being a billionaire is evidence of wrongdoing. Show me the proof of being a finances. Stock purchases leave a trail. This is why I'm inclined to think Trump is guilty. Well, that and the victim testimony. If he was innocent or guilty and halfway intelligent, all he would have to say is, yes, I knew him and I thought we were friends, but I had no idea what this guy was up to. He fooled everybody. All the photos and videos of him with Epstein would fit that narrative. If we found out he had been to the island, he could have been there at one of his front parties where no girls were present. But Trump is so much in denial that he only makes us all the more certain he is guilty. Something that would be very apparent to anyone who reads the documents. Which is why not releasing them in full is so fucking silly. Everyone who interacted with him in 2014 knew he was a pedophile. His conviction was years earlier, and was big news at the time. And it was pretty damn clear that he, one, got off incredibly. Some would even say suspiciously lightly, and two, he was entirely unrepentant. But also, you'd be crazy to think his cohort was only raping children on a private island. The island was a tool. I mean, when people say the list, they are usually referencing the client list, which may or may not exist, but if it does, by its nature, absolutely would be in itself evidence of wrongdoing or being related to that. Being merely mentioned somewhere in the files is an entirely different story. The files refers to all of the evidence gathered, which almost certainly also contains many innocent interactions with probably hundreds or thousands of different individuals and entities. Those who spoke to Epstein said his knowledge of banking and finance was unremarkable. The financier thing was just a front. Wouldn't you just come out, if you were on the list, and just say, I knew the guy. I don't rape kids. It sucks that happened. I didn't know he was doing that. Yes, the other example being Peter Mandelson, who was connected to Epstein for exactly those reasons. He was rich and powerful. No evidence that he was involved in the same sort of things as Trump, Prince Andrew, etc. This also lines up with the best, yes, I met Epstein. Met him once, thought he was super creepy and didn't see him again. Story, which is by Matt Groening, who invented The Simpsons. He gets invited to shit by rich people all the time. Apparently he'd been telling people at parties, oh yeah, a billionaire gave me a lift on his private jet. He then wanted his 19-year-old assistant to give me a foot massage. Like really wanted it. I NOP'd the fuck out of that. I think the guy had a foot kink. If you're famous, you get that stuff. It wasn't until later that he found it. It was Epstein testing if he was into way too young but legal women being weird as a test. Not all the crimes that Epstein and associated parties committed happened on that island, and we knew it. For example, Musk's Kung Fu session. This right here. The victims talked about being flown to a place in New Mexico where he would send his new recruits. Just Epstein, Maxwell, and the girl. Then they said he would come to their room and want to cuddle before bed, before Maxwell started her massage lessons. The island and Palm Beach weren't his only places he took girls. They jet-setted all around the world. If Musk didn't already have his history of trying to repopulate the world with his own Musk army and paying women to have his babies, I would be more inclined to believe him. He is a creep either way. The only thing I could think is there's a steady rumor that Musk's peeper doesn't work. That doesn't mean he didn't do non-penetration things, but it does make me wonder if it could maybe be less likely. I dunno. Doesn't Musk have 14 children with multiple women? Most all are known to be IVF babies. He's very big on making sure he has boys and not leaving it up to chance. It's speculated this is part of Musk's very public rage at his trans daughter, since he's willing to go some lengths to ensure he doesn't have any. Shit. Just imagine all the white-collar crime that he was doing at his day job. You really think someone who ran an underage human sex trafficking operation wouldn't be above a little wire fraud or embezzlement? That's the real story. And I mean every organized crime organization is on there with tenuous, speculative TIs to nearly 90 of the world's wealth under blackmail. That's not a bomb, that's a nuke. Yeah. Apparently the most damning thing on the document was that he dined with Epstein. Musk is an idiot, but I think not even him would taunt to release the files like he did with Trump if he knew it would implicate him as well lol. He did thank Maxine G for karate lessons in quotes, and he has never been known to do exercise, nor was Ghislaine Maxwell a personal trainer. Her expertise lay purely in pimping. Man is the bar on the floor in hell. I agree with this. Regardless of how socially ignorant he is, he wouldn't call to release the Epstein files if they implicated him. Given his dad and their daughter's situation, I'd probably see he disagreed with it. What about the Kung Fu with Maxwell stuff? Didn't he claim he did not know her outside of that photobomb situation? In this scenario, what do you think the Kung Fu lessons refer to? Fuck knows. And I'm not willing to speculate until we know more because that's useless. Thanks for this post. I absolutely can't stand Musk. But people need to stop jumping on every mentioned in the Epstein files anecdote. Dude was a very wealthy socialite. He met a lot of people and tried to charm his way into various tech and science communities. A picture or meeting with him does not automatically pedophile. Hopefully more files are released, but without more evidence it's innocent until proven guilty. MEH. If nothing else, it keeps the public focus on the file itself and, if done correctly, could add his voice to the call to release. He already called for the release. What these false weak accusations will do is to provide an excuse to the real pedos. It's muddying the waters by creating fake reports, so in the future, when similar headlines come out, they can just say, just like Musk, right? This is literally all the evidence leftoids have against Trump too. No. Most of the people photographed with Epstein didn't also walk in on teen beauty pageant contestants while they were dressing. Most didn't employ teenage girls to work in their own spas, which would later become a prime recruitment area for Epstein himself. Most weren't called a best friend by Epstein. Most weren't also friends with John Casablanca's Look Him Up, and most didn't have a history of making weird, sexually inappropriate comments about their own daughters. I could go on, but all of this is readily available to learn online for anybody with a room temperature IQ or higher. I wonder if he ever got those Kung Fu lessons from Ghislaine. I prefer to think that Musk's spidey sense tingled because Elon's dad, Errol, may have had similar vibes. So he politely said, no, I can't prove any of that, but Elon called his own father evil, and pretty much everybody could assume Errol is probably Epstein levels of evil, even if they can't agree on how evil Elon is. That actually makes a lot of sense. You have to be a real bad motherfucker if Elon, of all people, thinks you're evil. Also, according to Elon, Epstein was obviously a creep. That could just be him changing the story decades later. But I think the more interesting, though probably fictional story, is that Elon can subconsciously identify people who act like his dad. Dude's been a known creep since the 90s. I was still school back then and even I knew he was bad news. Elon thinks people who say racism is bad and trans people are okay are evil. If I recall, Elon's brother was much closer friends with Epstein. Far more likely that he might have visited. I suspect this is not an actual question and more an attempt to get Elon is on the Epstein list on the front page. Don't be like that, OP. Be like that to the actual people on the list. Like Trump. You know, the president. The one Elon said was on the list. It's so sad how this obvious explanation is just ignored by the Reddit echo chamber. It is getting worse and worse in this respect on here. And it's not unique to this topic either. It's a symptom of humanity's weakness. We want so badly to have an enemy that we will believe untruths about our opponents as long as they fit our worldview. You can see this all over modern conservatism. They will believe the Clintons ran a pedophile ring or had people murdered despite it obviously not being true. They'll believe Michelle Obama is a man or Obama wasn't born in this country just because it makes it easier to hate them more. My preconceived notion is that liberals were better as a whole at thinking more critically about these things. But watching Redditors to this day claim the Kirk shooter was a groyper despite no evidence of it at all is disheartening. They're falling for the same type of fabrication. I still don't believe it's happening as blatantly as it is on the right, but I had my hopes that rational, reasonable acceptance of truths would win out. It doesn't seem to be the way it's going. I think what I lean to is, so many people believed and spread Pizzagate, but turn a blind eye to real circumstantial evidence. Now, I'm not a circumstantial guy, but the ones that believe Q bullshit sure want to ignore email chains and actual links. Is this still happening? Seems to imply there was an agreed upon plan and that Musk at the very least expressed interest, no? Otherwise, why would there be a date? He was supposed to go? We don't know whether it happened or not, but there was a specific date that he was supposed to go. December 4, 2014. Doesn't it seem unlikely that Epstein randomly selected a date for Elon to go to the island if Elon never expressed any interest whatsoever in doing that? Answer: he's not on the list, but he's in the files. The list is the client list, a plain listing of Epstein's clients. It doesn't exist. The Epstein files are all the documents seized by the FBI when he was raided. This includes emails, hard drives, everything else relating to all of Epstein's criminal and non-criminal enterprise. Of course, anyone relevant and powerful, like Elon, would be in them. It doesn't mean he was one of Epstein's clients. Yet another necessary reminder, Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire financier, so he had connections to powerful people because, again, he was a billionaire financier. Assuming that everyone he associated with was a pedophile would be like assuming everyone who associated with Michael Vick was into dogfighting as opposed to the many people around him because he was an NFL quarterback. It's more that if you say, hang out with Bill Cosby now, people at minimum know you're okay with it. By then, Epstein was arrested convictically known for his actions. So even hanging out with or having lunch with them is, optically, not good. Epstein successfully quashed most of the information until the 2018 expose. I had literally never heard of him until then. I still have absolutely no idea what made him rich beyond being a financier. This is the same for Trump, as everyone has known for over a year now. Trump shows up in some flight logs to NYC from Florida. Before Trump banned Epstein from his properties and helped the prosecutor going after him. For those who think Epstein actually did traffic girls to other men, does the term client list imply he was actually paid by these men? Or was it just some fun recreational activity for him to do with his bros and the rich, famous, and powerful? I know there is the theory Epstein was an intelligence asset and used sex with underage girls as blackmail for Israel, the United States, or both. In that case, I would assume he didn't bother collecting money. If the theory is that he just trafficked girls for money, how much money could he possibly have been charging that would make this whole operation worth it for someone who was already very, very rich? Of course, there's the theory that he got rich only through sex trafficking or from gifts from people he met that way. However, you wouldn't think men would be willing to pay millions for sex, even with underage girls. They could just go to Thailand or someplace like that for much cheaper. Writing this makes me feel gross. Oh, let me just keep a nice detailed list of all the people I do illegal shit with, because there's so many I can't keep track of it. I mean, if you think about it for a second, it doesn't really make sense. Question: why are so many posts on this subreddit rhetorical political questions about things we already know a lot? It comes off less as actual questions of inquiries and more as disingenuous ways to spread more news, which clouds out a lot of actually mysterious things that informed people can actually sum up. Because they're bots and or paid accounts, Reddit ain't been real in a very long time. That Reddit bots with their how do you all feel about political threads are about to make me block that forum, which sucks because I used to like it. Same. The obviousness of it really annoys me. Like, I know there were bot accounts running that place last year, but now it's like they're not even trying. At least try to fool me, why I know? Mass manipulation actors and bots. Usually there isn't this much discourse, but this is a mega thread, so they're working overtime. Question: why are so many posts on this subreddit rhetorical political questions about things we already know a lot? You already know the answer. Just as with most questions posted, they are rhetorical questions. It is oodle. For me it was useful because I had no idea about Musk's involvement with Epstein. I saw some news that Musk resurfaced in Epstein files. So for me the post is feel quite organic cause I had the same questions. Answer: as far as I know, the list hasn't been released, and the article states that as well. In the article itself, it's even clarified that Musk probably didn't even visit the island. Throwing out accusations with made-up facts isn't something you should do. We already have enough fake news in the world, don't add to that. Regarding your wisdom or question, Abuse of the Reddit carousels is a common tactic to try to silence posts that people disagree with. Your post will likely be locked within 24 hours. It's also just a snide way for trolls to say kill yourself without getting banned. You gotta report the Reddit cares abuse. Reddit will ban people that abuse it. Answer: America has been in a state of rapid moral backsliding since about 2008. The threshold for what is considered reprehensible enough to warrant political consequences has continued to rise, exponentially so since the first election of Donald Trump, and this is mostly due to systemic racism. That sounds silly, but hear me out. For a very long time, Watergate was considered the epitome of government scandals and corruption. Anything in that range was threshold for shocking the public conscience. America's election of its first black president was a moment that signified a paradigm shift in American race relations, political norms, and was a huge blow to the traditional white political establishment, which basically shocked it into overdrive. Since then, there has been a growing resistance from conservative white people against anything deemed to be progressive, amplified in the early stages by Rush Limbaugh and Rupert Murdoch, and propelled into its current state by the entire Republican establishment, mainly through the woke label. John McCain and, to a lesser extent, Mitt Romney were the last bastions of decency in Republican political discourse. The Republicans learned quickly that this bubbling unease with progressive cultural change was too great of an opportunity to ignore. And so 2016 was their litmus test experiment to see just how ready white America was to violently drag itself back multiple decades culturally. Turns out immensely so. They wanted it so badly that even if the figurehead for that moment was a bumbling orange fuckwad degenerate who liked to grab women by the pussy, it wouldn't matter. Trump's morals became attached to the conservative objective. So now, the lower he and his confidants stoop, the lower the basters. Answer: you seem to be asking why there isn't a loop for you to be out of. That isn't really a question that can be given a meaningful answer. Maybe they don't know about it. Maybe they don't care or think other things are more important. Maybe it's old news they've already expressed opinions on. Maybe people are talking about it without you. Probably all of the above, but they're equally all true. Of why people aren't talking about, I don't know. The recent election in Moldova example chosen from the top of the Reuters World News page. The only real reason for something to not happen is that the conditions in which it would happen do not currently exist. Answer: the evidence wasn't clear on his involvement. Did it raise an eyebrow that he was named in a document? Yes. I don't particularly care for him or Tesla. He is weird and strange. That whole cave rescue thing was bizarre and made me not like him. But I can't say if he participated in Epstein and Trump's underage sex island. Answer: the report is from the Elon fanboys. They and other conservative masterminds like to use it as a method of harassment. As for the other question, it was already known that Musk had been on contact with Ghislaine and Epstein. It wasn't known how much contact there had been, though. Friendly reminder that all top-level comments must start with answer, including the space after the colon or question. If you have an on-topic follow-up question to ask, attempt to answer the question, and please review Rule 4 and this post before making a top-level comment. Join the Oodle Discord for further discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit if you have any questions or concerns. Answer: a lot of people are. Answer: they're not on the Epstein list. This is the exact response the Democrats, traitors to the country, want you to have. Saying that they're on the Epstein list implies that they are on some non-existent list of everyone who Epstein has trafficked children or adults to. There is no evidence of this. The Democrats selectively release names of their political opponents so that people like you would have this reaction. Instead, the files which were released detail things that have nothing to do with trafficking. I suggest you reflect on why Democrats only release these specific names from the files, showing only innocuous interactions associated with an abhorrent individual. Answer: because everything feels like rumor, not fact. Until Congress and lawmakers start pursuing the truth and uphold the law, every post or conviction feels like an internet thing, not a truth and justice thing. Answer: being in the Epstein files is not an immediate indication that the person was involved in anything illegal. The Epstein files is all of the documentation that was collected during the investigation. Phone records, flight logs, witness testimony, computer files, video files, and much more. Law enforcement looked at anything and everything they could. If Epstein had a backed up sink and had a plumber come out to clear a clog in the pipes, I'm sure that's somewhere in his calendar or on his phone. Or in Ghislaine Maxwell's records that say plumber Joe Smith is coming on May the 5th to work on the kitchen sink, you can now say that Joe the plumber is in the Epstein files. There are going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of people mentioned in these files that had contact with Epstein or Maxwell, so their name will appear in the Epstein files. There are a lot of famous names that appear in the files, and a lot of them are in the flight logs. Anyone who ever got to fly on his jet was logged. The date, time, pickup point, destination, etc. was tracked. So if you had a legitimate business meeting with Epstein and he says, I will send my plane to pick you up in San Diego and fly you out to the meeting in LAS Vegas with me, you are now one of those people who is in the Epstein files and in his flight logs. This does not mean you flew out to his private island and took part in illegal activities. This was part of the original reason that the files were sealed. Too many people would see that person X is mentioned in some fashion in the files and rumors start flying that they were one of the people doing illegal things, when it is possible that you just had a business meeting to see if you could sell his company widgets. Why they are still being kept sealed at this point, you can debate all you want. Just remember that everyone who appears in the Epstein files is not guaranteed to have been out doing illegal things. It just means they had contact with Epstein. I, for one, doubt that there is anything truly 100% proof positive in the Epstein files that anyone was doing anything illegal. If there were photos, video recordings, or audio in which they actively took part in something criminal, they would have been prosecuted, or someone would have leaked it. These files have been in the hands of both the Republican and the Democratic Party. If there was a picture of Trump, Clinton, or anyone else engaged in illegal activity, it would have been released by now. There are a ton of accusations made in the testimony. There are pictures of people standing next to Epstein or with young girls. There are a lot of people who feel that just being associated with Epstein is proof enough that person X must have been involved in something. But that is not enough in our legal system. You need more than accusations, bad feelings, and things that seem skeevy to actually find someone guilty of a crime. The Epstein files can probably do nothing more than make it appear as if someone may have possibly been involved in something bad or illegal. So neither side want to dump it all out on the ground and let the world see what is truly in it. It will just end up causing rumors, innuendo, and conspiracy theories while not really clearing things up. I'm not saying that evil things did not happen. I believe that young girls were trafficked, raped, and/or abused while in the sphere of Epstein's influence. Some major names may have been involved and done monstrous things. I just don't think that the Epstein files contain proof positive that any specific person was involved. That would stand up to the legal system's beyond a reasonable doubt standard. If the evidence is in there, then I would question the humanity of the hundreds of people over the years that have had that evidence in their hand and did not release it. Remember, this evidence has been collected and handled by police, the FBI, the DOJ, members of both parties of the House and Senate, and presidency. If there is proof positive of Trump or Clinton or anyone else sleeping with underage girls, and not one of the people that have had access has stood up and had the decency to say, I will release this image or video or whatever because it is the right thing to do, then we have another huge problem on our hands. We have hundreds of people willing to bury the truth of such a terrible thing. Answer: if you actually read the article and opened up the documents, you'll see that Elon Musk is only listed in the files once. There was apparently a meeting for Musk to visit the island, but with the note, is this still happening? That's all there is to it. He may or may not have closer ties to Epstein's operation, but it's definitely not ironclad evidence of anything in the documents that your post is asking about. On a side note, I don't like how this post is stickered, even though you seem to have arrived at a conclusion about something without evidence. And your question is about why people do not share your thoughts rather than an actual oodle question. Answer: it came out recently that Musk's dad, aside from impregnating his stepdaughter, apparently molested at least 5 of his kids and stepchildren. Maybe he is like his dad.